Cheers, guys. Epyx911, welcome to the Elitist Geek, and goddamn, that tastes good if you haven't had it for a while. It's been about 3 months for me. Yeah, I know. I'm still on the health kick, but I had to celebrate. Why am I celebrating? That's why. Persona Q. What's so special about Persona Q? Well, for starters, it's the first Persona game on the 3DS platform. For those of you familiar with the Persona universe, there are still some differences, so stay tuned if you weren't aware of this game. If you are, we'll touch on some other topics, but for those who know of Persona but want to know what's different or are just looking for a great new RPG, stay tuned. I'm going to chat about this for a bit. So, to date, Persona is a series that's been fairly popular, fairly niche, on the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, and most recently on the PlayStation Vita. On the Vita, it was a remake of the last PlayStation 2 Persona game, which was Persona 4. On the PlayStation Vita, they call it Persona 4 Golden. And I do believe I have a copy of it here. Yes, I do. On Epyx's shelf of awesomeness. That there is Persona 4 Golden for the PlayStation Vita. Which, if you've got an original PlayStation Vita, the OLED screen ones, is fantastic. Yes, it's a remake of the PlayStation 2, but I kid you not when I say it's a much, much better looking Persona than you had on the PlayStation 2. For starters, it's a lot crisper, a lot more colorful, and the OLED screen pops the colors. You play Persona 4 Golden on a PlayStation Vita and you will be smitten if it's your type of game, but more importantly, you won't be able to imagine it ever having been pretty console exclusive. They did a fantastic job on this. I was a little skeptical when it came time to have the game appear on the 3DS, right? But let's go back to that here. My fears have been allayed, and here's why. Persona Q lets you follow the familiar social lifestyle of, the protagonist. You play the protagonist, and he's usually new in town. Now, this game features cast from Persona 3 and or Persona 4. Persona 4 was my favorite of those two games, so I selected and opted to start with a Persona 4 cast. Not going to ruin it, no spoilers, fear not, but suffice it to say, it's been well worth my time. Some of your favorite Persona 4 characters are back, and damn, as funny and as involving as ever. The one thing I didn't like too much about the Persona series is that it was just too damn social. You see, you've got to keep your social calendar full with stuff, because the more people you socialize with, the more rapport you build up with individuals, the stronger essentially you become in the game. So it's to your advantage to socialize and be, a very social character. In real life, I'm a massive introvert. I got no problem being in front of people, right? I did a lot of theater, I did a lot of acting, love being on the stage. I'm not shy, but that's not what being an introvert is. Being an introvert is, and the analogy that I always use is, the main differentiator between introvert and extrovert is an introvert gets their energy being alone or in smaller, more intimate groups. An extrovert gets their energy, his or her energy, being in a social setting, i.e. not being alone or with a small group, but instead being the life of a party, right? So for me as an introvert, like I said, I love being on stage, I love being in front of people, but ask me to mingle after. Ask me to go to a party with 30, 40 people. I'm out of my element. I can fake it. I've learned to do that my whole life, but damn, I will need 2-3 days of recharge just to get my batteries pumped up again for the next such outing. So I try to avoid them do them sparingly throughout the year. I've got a small, tight group of friends, circle of friends, and that's where most of my social activity takes place, with and around. So having to do that in a game almost exclusively was draining. For me, gaming is supposed to be escapism. So the benefit of that is you could say, well, Epyx, you got to role play. I certainly did. I had to role play somebody who's a hell of a lot more social than me. But still, even role playing, it can be tiring. The parts I loved most about Persona on the PlayStation 2 and the Vita was the combat system, the skill system, the storylines. Fantastic. What I didn't like so much was the social thing. Now, great during the school year, because in both titles you are a student, and school year by its nature has a lot of activities. Where I ultimately got bogged down in the game was the summer months, when you were on quote-unquote summer holidays away from school. Still having to cram your calendar full with social events was something I didn't enjoy. All right. Persona Q mixes and changes a few things. One of them is that it uses a combat system and dungeon, well, not the combat system so much, but the dungeon exploration system of Etrian Odyssey, which doesn't have a huge social component to it and is honestly one of my favorite dungeon crawler titles on the 3DS or any handheld. It brings me back to the type of games I enjoyed when I was a teenager in my early 20s. Games like Bard's Tale, the original Bard's Tale, games like Might and Magic, games like Wasteland. That's what Etrian Odyssey reminds of. It's still very JRPG in terms of random combat. It's still very JRPG in terms of linearity. But with that said, you do have freedom, some degree of freedom to craft, to skill up your characters, and a more limited form of freedom to explore. But it's a fantastic game. So when I heard that Persona Q was going to mix in the 3D exploration style with the character building of Persona, I was like, dude, I want this game. Sweet, that sounds awesome. So that's exactly what I did. Is I went out and bought Persona Q, and so far I have not been disappointed, guys. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's everything I hoped it would be, and so far it hasn't been extremely social heavy, which is good. And I hope it's the start of things to come for the 3DS in terms of Persona titles. Even if that means remaking some of the Persona titles like they did with Etrian, right? Etrian Odyssey 1, 2, and 3 were released, and I'll give you guys a perfect example here. So this is an example. This is Etrian Odyssey for the Nintendo DS, right? And then here is the remake, which is Etrian Odyssey Untold: The Millennium Girl, which is a retelling of Etrian Odyssey to make it more of a storytelling experience. Because the dungeon crawlers historically tended to be pretty story light. So they've given you two options in Millennium Girl. The option that's most like the original Etrian Odyssey 1, i.e. not so heavy on the story, and the second option is to make it heavier on the story so that it's more like your conventional JRPG. So I'm hoping we see more of that on the Nintendo 3DS, because 2014 has really been a pretty lame ass year for RPGs for me. I'm pretty sure, what did I get at the beginning of the year? So if I look at my title, so with Persona Q, I think Soul Hackers was beginning of 2014, I could be wrong. And Bravely Default was, I think, actually no, that was even towards the end of 2013, Bravely Default. So yeah, it's been pretty slim pickings in terms of RPGs on the 3DS. So wholly recommend Persona Q for anybody out there who's on the fence for this title. If you want the best of Persona, the best of Etrian Odyssey, get this game. There's a collector's edition as well, and I think what it included was a CD with some music. This one was 49 Canadian, included the tarot cards, like I said. The other one includes the tarot cards as well, but also includes the music CD or art book, one of the two, can't remember, but it was 30 bucks more. So for me, this one was good enough. The last thing I wanted to talk about, guys, was, or is, the topic of lending stuff out. I wouldn't call myself a cheap ass, my wife would, but I would call myself thrifty. I'm obviously a collector. I'm not a hoarder, but I am a collector. Have I pirated in my life? Absolutely. Back in the Commodore 64 days, I was a filthy pirate. Now that I'm in IT and making decent money, I've tried to atone a bit for my past, and as you can see, I buy all my games. PC games, PS3 games, we've gone through these in former videos. The point I'm trying to make is, building up a collection like this, you get some pride in that collection. And I take really good care of my stuff. So I'm always really hesitant to not sound like a cheap ass when a friend wants to borrow something. And usually I'm pretty good with remembering who's borrowed stuff. Sometimes I forget. And one of my games has gone missing. It's Kingdom Hearts, Dream Drop Distance. I could have lost it, but I also could have lent it out. So one of the things I want to do moving forward in 2015, one of my resolutions is going to be to take better care of shit that I lend out. If I lend anything out, I'm going to log it. I know it sounds a little anal, but it's going to ensure that, like a library, I know who's signing stuff out, because I don't want to be cheap and say, no, buy yourself a copy. I don't mind lending stuff out, provided you take care of it and you return it to me, right? So, and again, like I said, I can't even be sure that I did lend it out. I could have lost it, my Hawaiian vacation, for all the fuck I know, right? But again, I should have taken an inventory before I left, make sure that what I come back with matches, instead of just taking a shitload of games with me. So basically what I did is I took them in my holders here. As you can see, so I've got, you know, all my DS games like that, and likewise my 3DS games, right? So Kingdom Hearts was part of the collection, now gone. Not going to cry about it, but just wanted to hear if you guys had any similar stories. How do you feel about lending out your stuff in general? Are you way less anal than me? Are you even worse than me? Do you actually have your friends sign stuff out? I mean, Christ, I'm getting too old for that shit. But still, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on games and lending them out. So there we go, guys. I will have another video up shortly because I've fallen a few weeks behind. I've been extremely busy in my personal real life, but as always, I appreciate you watching. Subscribe if you want more of these types of videos. I should have some cool reviews and more in-depth discussion on Persona Q probably within a couple of days once I get close to winning it, or in fact win it. As always, guys, till next time, cheers.